one of your books was on debunking the idea that consciousness is created in our minds or in our skulls, basically. What is the science of consciousness? Because that is a category right now that people are really spending a lot of money and time and energy into. Like, how do you measure consciousness if it's not coming from our brain? Where is it coming from?
Let me give you a little backstory here because what I'm about to talk about was not my worldview. I used to think life was random and meaningless. And when you die, that's the end of your sense of experiencing life. That's it. Psychic phenomena, things like that, that's superstition, things from ancient mythology and religious texts. Those miracles didn't happen, like that kind of a thing. And then in
Mhm.
2016, I was not looking for something new, but I started listening to podcasts and came across anomalous phenomena. So things that didn't fit my paradigm. These weird things like people claiming they talk to spirits and people claiming they have psychic abilities and working with clients on it and stuff like that. And then I realized there was scientific evidence that actually supported it. Then I had a major paradigm shift and then wrote my first book. It's called An End to Upside Down Thinking. And I realized that these various anomalies, these strange phenomena, all centered around what you're talking about, Candace, the brain consciousness connection. Like, what's the origin of consciousness? And I realized that I had a worldview which is very much in alignment with the mainstream scientific perspective, which is that our capacity for experience, some will call that consciousness, our subjective awareness, that consciousness that we all have at this very moment comes from the brain, meaning there's a lot of chemical and electrical activity up in your brain, and then consciousness pops out of it somehow. The challenge with that perspective, and it's actually known as the hard problem of consciousness, Science Magazine has called this the number two question remaining in all of science, which is that consciousness is not a physical thing. Like, I can't touch my consciousness. I know I have it because I'm having an experience, but I can touch my chair. That's physical. My leg is physical. Brain is physical. It's made out of matter. And yet consciousness is not physical. And what scientists don't understand is how could something non physical like consciousness pop out of something physical like a brain? And that's what Science Magazine's number two question in all of science is getting to. Like, it's a really fundamental issue because we can't even ask the question unless we had a consciousness to be able to process this.
Mhm.
So, where I come out on it now, and this has really sparked my whole journey to then getting into these other topics, is that the assumption that the brain produces consciousness is incorrect. That the brain doesn't produce it, but the brain processes consciousness like an antenna receiver, or I think more precisely, like a filtering mechanism, or we could even call the brain a blindfold, where there's a broader reality and the consciousness works through the body and the brain, and the body's like a vessel. So another analogy that I've often used, it comes from Dr. Bernardo Kastrup, a philosopher, who says that all reality could be likened to a stream of water, where water is analogous to consciousness. Each of us is like a whirlpool within that stream of consciousness. So we're an individual within the collective. So
Mhm.
that's why we seem like we're individuals, because at one level we're the whirlpool, but at another level we're the stream. So we're picking up the water, so to speak, of the broader stream. So stuff can get into our field, stuff can get into our consciousness. So where I'm going with this is that if you believe this general framework that consciousness is beyond the body and we're tapping into something like a cell phone, almost tapping into the cloud, then going back to the whirlpool analogy, if some of the water from my whirlpool gets into your whirlpool, that's like a psychic or a telepathic ability. So this model of consciousness would say, yeah, there should be psychic phenomena. That's not paranormal. It's only
Mm.
paranormal if you think consciousness is stuck in your skull. Another big implication is that, let's say a whirlpool stops being a whirlpool within the stream, the water flows somewhere else. The analogy there is that if the physical body dies, consciousness doesn't die, it simply transitions into a new state. And in theory, it could transition into the formation of a new whirlpool, i.e., reincarnation.
Right.
So theoretically, if you change the model of consciousness to say consciousness doesn't come from the brain, all of a sudden these quote unquote paranormal things are normal. So what I explore in that book and End Upside Down Thinking is not just this framework that I talked about, but actually the idea that there's scientific evidence for it.